Hi, and welcome to Small Business Marketing. I'm your host, Doc Angie, and I'm here to help you learn how to use the best of marketing principles to grow your business. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode of this amazing video series. Hi guys, now that we've finished the first video on the marketing plan, we're ready to do the second video. So in this one, we're going to talk about setting goals and objectives and then building the marketing plan. The goals and objectives guide the development of the marketing plan. So that's why we need to do those first. When we talk about goals, we need to talk about SMART goals. SMART is an acronym that stands for specific, measurable, achievable or attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So we might talk about something like increasing revenue by 10% over the next 12 months. Don't let it be generic, because just saying, well, I'm going to increase my sales really isn't going to help you to optimize your performance. We also don't want to forget about intermediate goals, because conversion doesn't happen in isolation. Conversion happens at the end of a process, and that's where the marketing funnel comes in. In this case, I like to think about it being a series of concentric circles, because in my experience, this is how real consumers make decisions about buying products rather than a linear funnel-like process. So you want to set intermediate goals for each of these stages in the process, not just conversion. When we talk about objectives, what we're really talking about is breaking up your goals into smaller pieces that are more short term. So we might talk about something like increasing our engagement on Facebook by 5% in the next quarter. Once we have these, now we're going to build our strategic plan based on them. And we're going to start our strategic plan by revisiting the 4 P's that we talked about in the first video. These 4 P's are product, promotion, pricing, and distribution or place. We'll start with product. Again, each of these 4 we've already covered, but we covered those as they relate to where you are right now. When we talk about this in the strategic planning portion of the business plan, we're talking about your plans with each of these 4 aspects for the next year, right? So it needs to be made that it's clearly a delineation between the two. It's not like we're covering the whole thing all over again. So we have things that we're going to consider in terms of our product and communicating with our target market. Things like our unique selling proposition or USP, and how we're going to communicate with consumers how ours is different than competing products. We're going to do our planning based on where our product is in the product life cycle, because just like people, products have a lifespan, and there's a slightly different strategy that we will do based on where the product is in that product life cycle. We also talk about product positioning, and this is an example of a product positioning map on 2 different criteria that consumers use in making a decision to buy products in this industry. Here we only have 2 criteria. In a computer, you can actually have multiple criteria because you can make a 3-dimensional product map. We want to choose the competitors and place them within this positioning map based on where they fit on those 2 criteria, and also based on the market share that they hold. So when we position our product, we don't want to position it as directly competing in the same area of that map with a competitor who already has a really large market share. We would rather compete with someone who has a smaller market share, or have our position all to ourselves, if that is a reasonable position. Next, we want to look at the topic of branding. And this is a huge topic, so I'm really only going to mention it today. We'll cover this in more detail in a later video. And then we have to talk about product class implications. So we have 4 classes of products. We have convenience goods, specialty goods, unsought goods, and then we have shopping goods. What type of product you have determines to a certain extent what the appropriate strategy is going to be. And this is based on what consumers think your product category is, not based on where you think your product fits. All right, now let's turn to the notion of promotional strategies. Although most people naively think that promotion is all there is to marketing, it's really only one of the 4 elements, as I hope you understand now. When we talk about promotional strategies, we're talking about 4 options. Advertising, which is paid ads in, newspapers, TV, digital. We have promotions, which are things like the hats, t-shirts, as well as coupons and rebates. We have direct and digital marketing, such as the mail that you get, both email and snail mail, as well as e-commerce and other types of online marketing activities. And finally, we have public relations, which is unpaid advertising. So while it's free, you don't have the kind of control over it that you might have with paid advertising. In promotional strategy, you need to determine a strategy for each of these channels, because you're probably going to use some combination. And even within each of these 4 strategies, you'll have different channels that you use, such as Facebook or TikTok, or a particular TV program or magazine. We also need to think about consistency across all these channels, because even though each channel requires its own strategy that's unique, you'll find that there needs to be consistency so that these messages reinforce each other. So things like a tagline and elements of visual branding, such as your logo and key images, as well as your color scheme. Normally, a company will develop a style guide that's shared with other members who have contact with customers and advertising, because you want the same thing to be on all of your external communications, as well as probably your internal communication. Cause marketing is an element of your promotional strategy, and this highlights your commitment to your community and to the value shared by your target market. We also talk about influencer marketing, which is using influencers or creators who have a large following on social platforms. These influencers then can share positive information about your brand. Often they do this for some form of compensation, such as monetary or even just for free products. When we talk about your pricing strategy, really your focus should be not on the price of your products, but on the value that you offer, because this is how your target market determines whether or not to buy your product. So by providing value to customers, you will increase your sales potential. If you are not a retailer, it's hard to get price changes through the channel of distribution. So think about things like coupons and rebates as a fast way to get price changes to the customer if you're not a retailer yourself. We can also talk about psychological pricing, which is a somewhat dubious form of pricing. I'm not sure it works, especially with sophisticated customers today, but it involves pricing your product at, say, $9.99 instead of $10 in the hopes that the customer will think that your product is $9 versus $10. Finally, if you use a subscription model, a freemium model works by offering your products to consumers either on a trial basis or offering a stripped down version of the product without all the bells and whistles of a more expensive product. Finally, let's turn our attention to the last P, which is place or distribution. They really tried to fit that one into the 4 Ps. When we talk about distribution, we're talking about getting products from point A to the customer. So if you have a retail establishment, you probably deal with distributors, or potentially you deal directly with the manufacturers, although that is a very inefficient model. If you're a retailer, you need to think about elements such as atmospherics, because people don't want to shop in really crowded environments. Even though that might be preferable for a bar, it doesn't work except maybe at the holiday season for regular customers. You also want plenty of parking and good lighting. You also want the environment to have a pleasing smell. The last thing that you want as a merchandiser, a retailer, or a distributor is stockouts, because stockouts give customers an opportunity to try out a competing product. If you're a retailer and you have stockouts frequently enough, customers will choose another retailer. If you're a manufacturer, you'll find that customers may switch after they are forced to try a competitor's product and you've now lost a sale. We can also talk about things like local marketing. If you are a business that only caters to customers in a small geographical area, there are special tools that you can use to help you to reach just those local customers. We can also talk about the intensity of distribution. Some products you don't want to see available everywhere because it cheapens the image of the product, such as a Rolex. Whereas other products, like water, you want available in as many places as possible to optimize your sales potential. In order to be successful, you need to establish and measure key performance indicators, or KPIs. These are those metrics that have the biggest impact on whether you're successful or not. By analyzing these metrics on a consistent basis over time and displaying these using visualization, you can create insights that help you to make better decisions in the future and optimize your performance. Finally, let's talk about action plans. Action plans are very detailed plans like you see in this slide. This provides all of the information a member of your team would need. You'll also want to include contingency plans. These are plans that you can very quickly put into place if something negative happens. So for instance, if a plane is delayed due to weather, you want to have a plan for how to communicate with customers as well as the airport employees and your staff in order to minimize the confusion and discomfort that this delay causes. Thanks, and I hope you enjoyed this video. Be sure to tune in to the next video and hit the subscribe button so you never miss a piece of advice in how to grow your small business.